We know MAGA is famous for lies. We know lies come out of MAGA left and right, day and night, all the time. But once a lie gets started, it's kind of hard to go back and refute it because everybody forgets the details. So I wanted to show you a great example, a brilliant example of how these stories get started and how they take off and how they're based in nothing but, you know, phrases like, just imagine, can you imagine if this happened? Or it's easy to imagine this might have happened, right? It's all based on speculation. And this is a great example of that. I want to go through a video that I saw last week, a week ago on Saturday, when the shootings happened when the shootings happened in Minnesota, where the House Speaker, I believe, was assassinated, and her husband, and where a state senator, was also shot, and his wife was shot. And so far, thankfully, I think they're both alive and apparently doing okay, or as well as could be expected. But this guy, I came across his video on Saturday evening, the same day all this happened. And the left. I'm so used to being on the right that I think the left is the enemy now. So, but actually, I'm can't be on the right, and I'm going to show you why. Because, especially as a Christian, how can a Christian be associated with a movement that's literally drowning in lies like this movement is? Well, look at this guy's video. I never heard of him before. It's a guy named Benny, apparently. And, he has a good, on-screen personality, and I will not fault him for that. And I can see where he can be persuasive to people who want to believe what he's putting out. But if you are more interested in the truth than propaganda, it's so easy to cut through it. And that's what I want to do now. I want to cut through some of this stuff and just show everyone. So when you encounter people who believe some of these things, you will have some good answers for them. All right, Benny, take it away.
A story directly from the pit of hell, the heart of darkness, a sick and twisted worldview of absolute and total extremism, leftist radicals slaughtering and killing in political assassinations in the state of Minnesota. It's all connected to the No Kings rally. There's probably one near you.
All right, keep this in mind. He recorded this on the day this happened last week, uh, literally hours after it happened, and literally before we had any information about it. He has already assumed several things. He's already assumed that it came from someone on the left. He's already assumed that there are multiple people involved. He said leftist radicals in the plural. And he assumed it's all connected to the No Kings rallies, too. Lots of assumptions there. Not a bit of evidence for any of it.
Ladies and gentlemen, get the hell away from these people and these rallies. These individuals are unstable. It's incredibly sick, and this is an absolutely horrible story.
Right. So get away from these people. They're terrible people, even though we don't even know who did it. We don't know why he did it. We don't know anything behind it. But we know they're terrible people, and we know it's the people on the left. It can't be people on the right, because in the right's worldview, in their belief system, violence simply can't come from the right. It can only come from the left. That's one of their fundamental beliefs. He is going to twist like a pretzel to try to get out of this. And this was before we had the evidence that came out in the last week. A lot of evidence came out days after this to show that everything he's saying is untrue. Okay, let me give him a little benefit of the doubt and say, perhaps he didn't know. Perhaps he didn't know what evidence was going to come out in the next few days. And maybe, hopefully, I hope since that evidence has come out, he's gone back on and said, look, I thought it was somebody on the left, but apparently it wasn't. So it was a crazy person. I mean, just get out of it somehow, but you got to come clean and tell the truth or you lose all credibility.
In Minnesota, there was a very contentious and very important vote to kick criminal aliens off of Medicare. It passed by a single vote. And that vote was actually from a Democrat leader. Melissa Hortman is her name.
Right. And this is the story that came out literally within hours of it happening, suggesting that because a Democratic leader voted against undocumented aliens having access to federally funded or state funded health care, that someone on the left got so angry and so upset that he went out to assassinate her. But the weird thing is, in this story, he's going to go on in a few minutes and he's going to admit, at least he'll tell the truth on this, that this guy also shot another person in the Minnesota State House, in the not in the House, but in the Senate, who didn't vote that way, but was also a Democrat. So the evidence was even trickling in at that point. I mean, from the first moment that we knew he did shoot somebody who voted against Democrats on one vote, a Democrat, and but he also shot another Democrat who didn't vote against Democrats. So that's starting to make it a little harder to explain, don't you think? But in this video that he did on that day, no seeming recognition of that, or even recognizing the fact that that could be significant.
Now, Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, just a week ago told Democrats that they need to get meaner, they need to get nastier, and they need to get more aggressive.
Now, this is where it starts to get really evil. He's going to try to pin it on Tim Walz now. He's going to include Tim Walz and all the numerous people he's going to try to blame for this. Pretty it's evil stuff because you're lying about people. You're lying about good people. I don't agree with Tim Walz on a lot of things, but I think he's a good and decent man. And I don't think there's any chance in the world he would have even imagined having something like this done. But these people have come out this week and said Tim Walz ordered him to do it. Or I think the killer said that. I think he wrote something saying Tim Walz ordered me to do that. They're trying to blame the left from the start. So here's a killer on the right, a MAGA man, and before he kills, he writes a note to blame it on the left. How deluded is that? It's totally delusional.
Tim Walz is here on camera saying that it's a horrible, unspeakable tragedy that unfolded. Well, that's very strange. Uh, he's the one fomenting this violence. And of course, Tim Walz did not like the vote that Melissa just took.
Yeah, so he didn't like the vote that she took. Does that make him responsible for the killings? Any Democrat wouldn't have liked that vote. All the other Democrats voted the other way, so none of them liked it. You know, when in this country have we ever gone out and had politicians murdered because we didn't like a vote they took? That's not how we handle things in this country. At least that's not how we handled them back when things were great, back when America was greater. But apparently that's how we're going to handle them now.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you will be not shocked to learn that the details of who the killer is are all coming together. First off, this is the backseat of the killer's car. He had no kings signs in the back of his car. This no kings rally, as we've covered on the channel, is a far left-wing astroturfed billionaire funded rally with a bunch of left-wing groups and organizations. It's an anti-Trump rally.
Yeah, so they're saying that because he was on the left, he was pro No Kings rallies. So he had all these papers in his car because he loved the No Kings rally so much. But what person who loves a rally puts, looks like 50 or 100 sheets of paper cut out into little squares with No Kings written on them? I mean, if this makes him a liberal, if these sheets of paper make him a liberal because he wrote No Kings on them, then the fake police uniform he wore to trick his way into the homes of the people he tried to murder, these make him no more liberal than that fake police uniform make him a cop. So we know he's a tricky dude. He put on a police uniform so people would trust him, and when he knocked on the door, they let him in. But that didn't make him a cop, did it? Did it? Did it, Benny? No, it didn't. And No Kings signs in your car don't necessarily make you part of No Kings. I know a lot of people who went to No Kings and they didn't have any signs. How is that a sign that you are a No King supporter? As if you support No Kings, so you're going to go write down the two words No Kings on 100 sheets of paper. That's how you show your support. What was he going to do? Throw it into the crowd like confetti? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. What would a No King supporter do with all these little sheets of paper? But to Benny and the people on the right, that's real solid evidence that he was No Kings because he had the words No Kings written in his car.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, it gets worse. Get a load of this.
Wait, let me just point out one more thing. Look at the top of his browser. Notice what his sources of information are. They're all from X. Looks like maybe two of them are from something else. I think that one's the New York Post, which is a right wing rag. Um, but look, he gets all of his information from social media posts on X. Not exactly a solid source of information. People can write anything on there, and as you'll see, they have.
Bolcher was a Tim Walz appointee on one of the governor's boards. What a shock. So this man served as on the board of governors. Here's Tim Walz's signature as a business member of the governor's workforce.
Right. Look, this guy was invited to be on a nonpartisan board of business owners and business people, business members of the community, and he it's an unpaid position. It's nonpartisan, like I say. So, in other words, he didn't have to agree with Walz on anything. He didn't have to be a Democrat to be put on this. Governors do this all the time. They appoint and invite prominent business people in their areas to join these advisory boards to give advice to the governor. The governors may ask, "Hey, what would be good for business? I want to hear from real business people." That doesn't bestow any kind of association between him and Tim Walz. None at all.
Development. Look at that, Vance Botler. But he was a appointee of Tim Walz. So if you're an appointee of Tim Walz,
So what?
if you have No Kings protest signs in the back of your car, you're probably not a Republican, right?
Right. If you're appointed by Tim Walz to something and you write fake flyers for some rally and you wear a fake police uniform, you're probably a Democrat, right? Unless you're trying to fake people out. This appointment by Tim Walz, it's absolutely meaningless. Absolutely meaningless. I mean, there are boards all in all the states. There's boards, there's arts boards, the boards of people who support the arts and they advise the mayor or the governor about what they can do to support the arts or to support this or that. Those things are all over the place. They mean nothing. What does he mean? Tim Walz appointed him, therefore this is Tim Wall's fault. That's what he's getting at in the end. Watch and see.
In case you're wondering if this person is a Republican or a Democrat, this assassin, let's add more logs to the fire here of the
Watch out. These logs are going to get really, really serious now. Lots of evidence coming. This is real evidence here.
left wing fire. Bolter is allegedly a suspect in the shooting. Two Minnesota Democrat state legislators and their spouses. He was the CEO of a government-subsidized U.S. federal government-subsidized private protection agency known as Red Lions Group.
Okay, this Red Lions Group was his own company. It was some kind of security company. Now watch how he twists that and mangles this whole story and twist it into something that is absolutely not. Watch this.
Lions Group received $20,000 in small business loans.
Okay, so
He was listed as the CEO of the Red Lions Group. What is
now read this sentence. I guarantee you this is what happened. It says Belter, which is my understanding of how his name is pronounced. Belter is listed as the CEO of Red Lions Group. So he's the CEO of his own company. I've had my own company for years and I call myself the CEO. That's no big deal. Anybody can do that. Which was active. His company was active in the Democratic Republic of Congo. He is highlighted on the Minnesota African Union website. Ooh. Okay, well, first of all of this is a distortion, and some of it's completely untrue. But i- my understanding is he was in the Democratic Republic of Congo to preach. He was preaching there. So I don't know how that makes him a Democrat. But I think they saw the word democratic here. He was active in the Democratic Republic of Congo. I guess I don't notice the word republic comes right after that, and if you add a into that, it's the Democratic Republican of Congo. So I mean, I don't know. Get your get your stories straight. Twist your stories in a straight way.
The point of this group? Oh, to relocate Africans to Minnesota.
All right, let's go back. I messed that up because I was talking too much. Watch what he says the purpose of this group is, the Minnesota African Union. Watch.
Group. Oh, to relocate.
Okay, let me go back one more time. I got it this time.
What is the point of this group? Oh, to relocate Africans to Minnesota.
No, that's not the purpose of this group. The purpose of this group is not to relocate Africans to Minnesota, which makes it sound like there's some kind of modern day slavery group going over to Africa and, I don't know, kidnapping, recruiting, whatever, Africans and bringing them back to Minnesota. That's not what they do. What they do is work with Africans who have already come here to help them get settled, to help them get better educated, to help them get more opportunities and better jobs, so they're not a drain on our society. And the reason they came in the first place was Tim Pawlenty in the 90s, the governor of Minnesota at the time, started bringing them in because the federal government at that time, under Bill Clinton, remember, he did a bunch of stuff on deportations because immigration was a big issue back then too. So he deported tons of people from the United States, and the meat packing plants in Minnesota were running out of workers. So Tim Pawlenty said, let's go over there and Somalia, apparently, and let's see if we can recruit people to come here and work. So what's wrong with that? I mean, maybe it caused trouble when they got here. I don't know. But, you know, the purpose of this Minnesota African Union was, and I'm not even sure that's the correct name. I'll check that in a minute. But that their purpose wasn't to bring Africans here. It was to work with Africans after they already got here. And what's the problem? If a bunch of new immigrants from a foreign country come in with a culture completely radically different from ours, don't you want some groups to go in and try to help them out, try to help them integrate? I think that's a great idea. I do. But to say that their purpose was to bring them here, absolutely wrong. It just sounds like a little detail, but it's not a little detail. And he's associating Vance Belter with this as if he was in on this. He was bringing these people in, and now, watch, he's going to say this in a minute. USAID got its funds cut, so he's going to suggest and insinuate that that was hurting Belter, and that all of this is part of the reason why a Democrat would want to go kill a Democrat.
You can't even make this stuff up.
Uh, Ironic he would say you can't make this stuff up while he's making every bit of this up. Every bit of it. I'm going to show you in a minute. I'm going to show you from the information that's come out in this past week how all of this is wrong. It's all wrong. It's all wrong.
How much have we gone on and on and on about how Minneapolis isn't Minneapolis anymore because they moved Somalia to Minneapolis?
Okay. So, that could be a good point. But what does that have to do with this? What is the fact that Minneapolis has a lot of Somalians living there? What does that have to do with this killing and whether or not this man's on the right or the left?
Right? But now we get this. This is active in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
They see the word Democratic and they think it's Democrats. That's how they got this. I mean, seriously, they probably saw that and go, "Oh, look, he's a Democrat."
Alliance Group. He's highlighted on the Minnesota African Union website. The Minnesota African Union website states that a statewide umbrella organization that is focused on the well-being of the immigrant community.
Okay, that's what I said. Being focused on the well-being of the immigrant community is a whole different thing than being an organization focused on bringing Africans here, right? Now let's look at their website. Check this out. This is a public statement from the Minnesota, see, it's Minnesota Africans United. They already got, they got that wrong. What did he call it? Oops. Nope. Hold on. Yeah, he called it the Minnesota African Union, but that's not what it's called. It's called Minnesota Africans United. All right. Sorry, let me get back to my thing here. Minnesota Africans United. Get the name right. You see right there. This is how inaccurate they are because they don't care. They're sloppy because they don't need the facts. They don't care about the facts. They only care about the facts insofar as they can use them and twist them to make the story come out the way they want the story to come out. So who cares what the organization's called, right? Anyway, this is a public statement from the Minnesota Africans United regarding the tragic incident involving Representative Melissa Hortman and Senator John Hoffman. And this was 7 days ago. I'm recording this on Saturday, June 20, what is it? Yeah, June 22nd. And so this was exactly a week ago, and it happened a week ago. So this statement came out very, very quickly after this incident. So it's, kind of a normal statement for this kind of thing. It starts off, we're devastated and sorry about the tragic events that just occurred. But then the second paragraph, he gets to, or whoever wrote this, the president and CEO, I guess, gets to what he wanted to say. In response to the inquiries we have received, we want to clarify that approximately 3 years ago, in August of 2022, Mr. Vance Belter participated in a virtual session webinar. Okay, a virtual session webinar is like a Zoom call. And a webinar is something organizations give where they're giving like a talk to a group of people, and the group of people are on the Zoom call. His involvement was facilitated by a third party. No idea what that means or why it matters. Mr. Belter was never hired, paid, or contracted by the Minnesota Africans or by Minnesota Africans United. He has never served in any official or unofficial capacity as a representative of our organization, and we've had no contact with him since that one-time appearance. Okay? No involvement, no contact, no nothing. This whole thing has nothing to do with Minnesota African United. All right? All right. Let's continue.
So now you're starting to see the connections here, right? With Democrats who voted against healthcare for illegal immigrants. Could you imagine how much this guy's funding has now been cut?
No, I'm not seeing a connection because you haven't even established he got any funding. Wait, you realize what he's saying, right? This guy who was in a one-time Zoom call with this organization, he is saying he's conflating that to mean that it was Belter's organization. Here, I got a theory for you. How about this? And it'll be along the exact same lines, and it will be no more stupid than what you're listening to here. His name is Vance Belter, and the vice president's name is J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance? Vance Belter? Ring a bell? Obviously, MAGA and the right and the president wants Democrats killed. So J.D. Vance had a guy named Vance go do a killing because it would send a signal to the base that J.D. Vance had something to do with it. And they will cheer and applaud that because they want to kill Democrats too. That's my theory. How is it any worse than this theory, which is completely not based in any facts at all? There's nothing that says Belter ran this Minnesota African United organization. Nothing. But that's what he's conflating it to mean.
How his group now is now defunct after USAID cuts. And
Okay, his group is now defunct? What is he talking about? Is he talking about the security company or this organization? But who said the organization is defunct anyway? Here, let me give you something that is just as wacky as that. This is from a BBC program, which is really funny, actually. Um, she has a theory about ghosts, okay? And her theory is no more wacky than his theory. And the reason I'm playing this is because it really shows their way of thinking, how detached from reality it is.
Okay, so ghosts. When a human body dies, which hole does the ghost come out of, north or south?
I don't regard ghosts as a hard scientific subject, I'm afraid.
Let me tell you something. Don't dismiss it. In 2021, my Aunt Carol got engaged to a man called Bob Collins. But one day, he just vanished and cleared out a bank account. And when she looked up the name Bob Collins, she discovered he'd died in 1958. He'd been a ghost all along.
Could it not just have been someone impersonating Bob Collins?
No, there were photos of Bob Collins in 1958, and he
See how they have an answer for everything?
looked totally different, which proves he disguised himself so she wouldn't know he was a ghost. You can't explain it, can you? It's terrifying.
Isn't the easier answer that he doesn't look like him because it's a different person altogether?
No, it's a ghost.
Cracks me up. I love that. It's a ghost. Yeah. Um, but that's how they think, right? That's how they think. And it's hard to let go of that belief. Really hard. She illustrated that so well in that clip. Okay, I just want to look at a couple of more things. This is the evidence that has come out in the last week that proves everything that they've been saying on the left is just absolutely wrong. Let's check this out from Wired magazine. Yeah, okay. I remember when it was a magazine, so that's why I call it that. The Minnesota shooting suspect's background suggests deep ties to Christian nationalism. How many Democrats are Christian nationalists? I think in the whole country, it's zero. It's my opinion. Experts say that the suspect showed clear ties to forms of so-called charismatic Christianity that views abortion as a sacrifice to demons and seeks the end of secular democracy. And I talked a little bit about this on my last what do you call them, episodes? Anyway, on my last video, and it's a group that you need to look into if you haven't already, called the NAR, the New Apostolic Reformation. The more you learn about that, the more you understand how they are behind almost all of the religious fervor for Trump. And you'll also learn how historically unchristian this group is, the things they believe. Very, very unbiblical beliefs. Okay, they say down here that Mr. Vance, worked in the food service industry, local government, and private security. And over 40 years or so, his religious worldview appeared to incorporate fringe theological ideas that are often associated with so-called charismatic Christianity and Christian nationalism, a movement that's captured the American religious right. Yeah, that's really where all this stuff is coming from. So a guy who has studied Christian nationalism and has looked into Vance and learned a lot about his history, he says about Vance, he says that he found the perspectives and policies of the liberal left egregious, viewing such people and their work as anti-Christian and anti-God. They were harming the vision of a truly Christian identity and nation. So that's where he says he's coming from. And how liberal does that sound? So liberal, right? Okay, and then we have this piece in The Guardian, which has done a pretty good job covering the story. Suspect in Minnesota, lawmaker's killing was a prepper preparing for war. How many liberal preppers do you know? The man charged in connection with the recent shootings of two Minnesota lawmakers and their spouses was a doomsday prepper who instructed his family to prepare for war as he tried to evade capture according to new court filings. So, yeah, he was telling them war's coming. Let's get out. Let's be careful. And one more paragraph here. Law enforcement found a hit list of individuals inside what they believe was Belter's vehicle. It included Hortman, Hoffman, and several other, get this, Democratic lawmakers, as well as reproductive rights advocates, so abortion advocates. All right. Early in the week, it did come out that he had a list of 70 people who were on his hit list. But nobody, the law enforcement at the time, wasn't saying what kind of people were on the list. And I waited. I wanted to hear, was it Democrats on this list or Republicans or a mix, maybe some random mix, which would say maybe it wasn't in any way partisanly political. But the list hadn't come out yet. They hadn't given us any information about it. But now we have information about the list. This is from Wikipedia's article, which I'll show you at the top, 2025 shootings of Minnesota legislators. All right. They do it. They do a really good job, actually, putting all the pieces of this story together. Better than I've seen in any other media. So if whatever you want to know, you can go here. They have links to the sources, as always. But the motive, this was the part I was interested in. Check this out. This is the clincher. This puts to bed all the lies the left is telling about the story. Federal charging documents described Belter as acting with the intent to kill, injure, harass, and intimidate Minnesota legislators. Belter's anti-abortion views were placed under consideration as a possible motive. Now, I highlighted that in red or dark pink, whatever this color is, because it's important. Because look who's writing this. It's coming from federal charging documents. This is from the federal government. In other words, this is from Donald Trump's and Pam Bondi's DOJ. This is from the Trump Department of Justice. And the Trump Department of Justice is saying his anti-abortion views are a possible motive. That comes from the top of the MAGA top. That's the top of MAGA. Trump and the DOJ. I give them credit for, so far at least, being honest with this story. I believe that what they're saying here is true. And I'm a little surprised that they're actually telling the true story here so far. I hope that continues. And if it does, I will give them credit for that. Look, those of us who are on the other side, who are critical of this administration and a lot of things the president does, if they do something good, especially as Christians, we have to say so and give them credit for that. Okay, why would any politician work to get your favor if every time he did something you wanted him to do, you criticized him for it? Let's stop tearing people down in this country. They tore Joe Biden down like crazy. I mean, Joe Biden, in a lot of ways, was a great president, and in a lot of ways, he could have done things a lot better. So as Christians, Democrat or Republican, that's not our top priority. We stand with Christ, which means in the political arena, we have to stand with truth. And if truth is not in favor of what we want to push, then so be it. Admit it. Okay? Look, the Justice Department in this case has done a credible job. I believe what they're saying here. I believe it's true. I just hope it doesn't occur to somebody in the administration that, whoa, wait a minute. If we convict him, it's going to be like saying somebody from the right committed violence. That's honestly what I expected them to do here. So the fact that they're not doing that right now, I think is creditworthy. We should give them credit for that. Okay. I don't know if it'll continue. If it does, I will happily embrace it. And if it doesn't, I will happily say something about it. A friend of Belter said that after the attacks, Belter was a conservative who voted for President Donald Trump and was strongly against abortion rights. You could say, well, maybe his friend was lying. Okay. Well, Benny, who we just listened to, didn't even have a friend to lie. He wasn't even going by what friends said. He wasn't going by what anybody said. He was just piecing little things together that he was reading on Twitter. Just people posting imaginary things. You know what? Here's what they do. They get a story like this and they're like, "Oh, we can't let this come out that a guy on the right did this." And they get all the information they can get, and then they piece it like a puzzle. They put it together in a way that makes it look like, oh no, he's on the left. Has no attachment to truth at all. None. This, at least, we have a guy who says he's his friend. At least we got something. That's better evidence than just making stuff up in your head. All right. The vehicle left in the driveway of the Hortman home contained a list of about 70 potential targets. Okay, now this is where the evidence on the other side really starts to come down and make it impossible to go with that theory that they're going with so far on the right. So his car was left in the driveway and it contained a list of 70 potential targets. But the question is, are the targets Democrats and liberals, or are they Republicans and conservatives, as you would expect if the guy was on the left? Or is it a mix, like it's half Republican, half Democrats, which would tell us a whole different story? All right, so the 70 potential targets, including abortion providers, pro-abortion rights advocates. How many people on the left are going to target abortion providers? No, they embrace abortion. They love abortion. Well, they love the right to have an abortion. And lawmakers, the list included lawmakers in Minnesota and other states. Hortman and Hoffman's names appeared on the list alongside Walz. So he was going to kill Tim Walz as well, who is also a Democrat, who did not vote against Democratic, programs. Also on the list was United States Representatives Ilhan Omar, a Democrat, Rashida Tlaib. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing her name right. Also a Democrat. Hillary Scholten, a Democrat. United States Senators Amy Klobuchar, a Democrat. Tina Smith and Tammy Baldwin, Democrats. And Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, all of them Democrats. And these people are going to come out and say, oh, look, the evidence is building that he's a Democrat. No, it's not. Your evidence is crushed with this list. Crushed with this list. It's irrefutable now. Officers discovered a stack of flyers in his car for No Kings anti-Trump protests, which were to be held on the day of the shooting. And they say nothing about why. There could be 100 reasons why. I'm guessing if he had the presence of mind to fake a cop uniform, to pretend to be a police officer, to get his way into these people's homes, that it wouldn't have been much more for him to think, well, let me fake also being a No Kings protester. And that way, people will think I'm on the left, and they'll think a leftist is killing these people. In a letter addressed to the FBI, Belter alleged, oh, get this, he wrote a letter to the FBI at some point, and he alleged that Governor Walz instructed him to kill multiple officials. See, I mentioned this earlier, that he was going to do that. He's saying Governor Walz instructed him to kill multiple officials, including particularly Senator Klobuchar, to allow Walz to run for her Senate seat. Get out of here. That is absolutely ridiculous. Authorities stated that the letter was left in a car that Belter had deserted near his house, along with his confession. All right, guy's a nut job. And anybody who believes he's on the left is similarly I won't say it. You can guess, right? I hope so. But yeah, that's it. That's the story. That is a clincher. Everybody on his list was a Democrat. And like I said in my last video, Democrats don't make a habit of killing Democrats. They also don't make a habit of killing Republicans. And Republicans don't make a habit of killing Republicans. And all but this one don't make a habit of killing Democrats either. This is obviously a politically motivated guy. On my last video, I looked into his religious beliefs. His religious beliefs leads directly into this. What he's been taught for 40 years is very easy to jump off from that into killing because you think you're doing it for God. You think you're killing demons. It's so detached from reality and so detached from scripture. It's all bad. It's all bad stuff. But a lot of people on the right are influenced by the same religious system and the same religious stream. And fortunately, they're not out killing people right now. And we hope that'll remain the case. All right. Anyway, I just wanted to take a look at all this and give you the information on it. And take a look at the anatomy of the lies that come out of MAGA constantly. You know how they respond to this? They'll say, oh, well, lies coming out of the left too. Okay, then do a video and show us and detail it and make it factual and make it based in truth. All right. Keep walking in the truth and keep Christ first. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.